okay, assuming you're Steven, you're looking for love now. Are you happy to be in 2024, or would you have preferred to be in the past, 25 years ago, or maybe even 100 years ago?
I mean, I like this era now 100%. But also, if I was born, 50 years ago, maybe I would feel
You probably
differently.
wouldn't
But
know different.
yeah, of course, yeah. But hey,
So I,
maybe in the 40s I would have been who knows? I mean, I definitely prefer this era now. But yeah, I mean, we're products of our time, so who's to say I would have felt 50 or 100 years ago? Yeah.
that's interesting because I feel like from what I'm hearing from my audience, for men at least, there are a lot of guys who are saying that they are very blackpilled about what the current dating situation looks like. And from what I understand, it's because, I mean, I think nowadays the power has kind of shifted in terms of relationship dynamics. A lot of people think that women are basically holding the keys, not just to sex, which traditionally they always have, but also to relationships. And that if you can't even get in the door for that first initial date, then as a man, your power to technically control relationship status, that doesn't even exist to begin with for a lot of men.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The balance has swung really dramatically. My kind of like explanation for this, I'm going to trigger the out of your audience today. My explanation for all of this is I view there's like a basket of feminine traits and there's a basket of masculine traits. And for a long time, religious people and red pillars and everybody's kind of coped that like, oh, feminine traits are beautiful and masculine traits are good and they complement each other. But I think deep down, we all know that's bullshit. All the masculine traits are really cool. Having honor, having integrity, being a provider, being able to, stand up for your enemies and for your family and blah, blah. These are like really cool things that everybody wants to do. I think we kind of deluded ourselves into thinking like only men want that. Like women want to be feminine and elegant and caretakers and breastfeeders. And that's like the best thing ever. Not to say that these things are bad. I'm just saying that like in the box of masculine traits, there's like 80% of these traits are things that everybody wants. Nobody wants to be weak. Nobody wants to have to be taken care of. So I think as time has gone on, as women have gotten access to birth control and have gotten access to education and then careers, I think that what we've seen is women have kind of like always had this feminine side. They've done a really good job at growing their masculine side as well. And men have had their masculine side, and that's it. And there hasn't really been a push for men to encompass like more intellectual feminine traits. And so you've got this era now where women have become these like Voltrons of like all these different powerful forces. And now when you're a woman and it's 2024 and you're looking into the dating field and you're like, okay, well, who should I date? Well, you don't need a guy for sex because you have birth control. You're not going to get pregnant every time. And you don't need a guy for money. You can work your own job. So now the value add for a guy has to be really high. Because before it was like, listen, do you want to be a fucking unwed, unpregnant loser at 30? Or do you want to get with me because I've got a paycheck? And now if you're a guy, a paycheck's not enough, And yeah, I think women with like jobs and birth control are like kryptonite to guys who can only offer their wallet, which is the only thing guys have ever really been trained to do. So I think, I think it's hard for guys right now because socially they're just not trained, and nobody wants to train them or learn that because why feminist stuff sucks. When you think of feminist stuff, you think of blue-haired, sissy, progressive crybaby guys. It doesn't seem like a cool thing, Yeah.
Right. No, even feminists themselves are not lining up for the male feminist ally, like cuttlefish person who's no. But it's kind of interesting because I feel like there are a lot of red pill guys who, strangely enough, share the same opinion that like historically men were kind of there to be the breadwinners, but now that we no longer need men as women to be the breadwinners, it's kind of like torpedoed relationships. I feel like as a woman, which will be my trump card throughout this stream, that kind of overlook, like, yes, obviously there was the financial aspect to it, but I don't think that's enough. I don't think that completely explains why we're seeing like marriage rates decline, because I think there's a lot of women out there who, even if it were, let's say, a billionaire guy, 50 shades of gray, super attractive, whatever, they still want someone who's actually like a good father and someone who's caring and an actual partner. And I think when there are a lot of guys who complain like, oh, well, women just aren't interested in dating nowadays. It's like, yes, we are. Women still very much are interested in partners, but I feel like men are kind of at a loss as to how to relate emotionally to women in that regard.
I think that we can also dive in on any of these things on a deeper level. I don't know if I would agree with the women want like a good father thing. Again, I think the expectations for parenthood were way, way, way different back then. I'm borrowing heavily from my own household experience, which I hear echoed a lot, and then I'm borrowing heavily from like sitcoms at the time. But I feel like the vast majority of the parenting was left up to the woman, and I feel like for men, the meme was always like they go to work, they come home, you leave them alone in the evening, and then hopefully they kind of like play with you on the weekends, and that was like basically it in terms of expectations. And then like even like Boy Meets World and stuff. Although I think that father was a little bit more emotionally in tune with Corey and Sean. But I feel like the meme was always like, go ask your mom, go talk to your mom, go talk to your mom about this, do it, I just gotta leave me, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that was kind of, unironically, the standard, I think, for a lot of dads at the time. And I think that the expectations for co-parenting, the expectations for emotional involvement of the father, I feel like those have all increased pretty dramatically over time. I really do feel like in the past, the big... I feel like we over romanticize a lot of things. Oh God, I don't know how old you are now, but I'm 35 now, and now I'm old enough to where I see lower generations talk about the older generations, and I see how fucking stupid it is. And I know I've done this when I was in my 20s. But some girl on Twitter was tweeting out. She's what was she? I think she was a Gen Zer. She tweets out and she's like, this is bullshit. I work at Walmart 40 hours a week. Did you see this video? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I saw
she's
that.
crying in the car. And she's like, 20 years ago, on minimum wage, you could afford blah, 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 blah. And it's like, 20 years ago, I worked at McDonald's for $5.15 an hour. You can afford shit. What the
Yeah,
fuck?
you had
You're
to have
insane.
a roommate. Yeah, you weren't. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was on like the federal minimum when I was in college for sure. I didn't have my own like 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. No way.
So I feel like when people sometimes when they talk about the past, I feel like they romanticize the out of a lot, where they're like, oh, the average man was like an emotionally stable guy that worked a hard job, white picket fence, good union work, mom had 3 kids, dinner on the table all the time. I think relationships were probably a lot more dysfunctional back then than we realize. How many people were on different types of drugs that were even legal back then, all the sexual and physical abuse, etc., that wasn't even reported because it was kind of expected. Also, we didn't have fucking cameras in everybody's fucking face to record every single mistake that you made, whereas today we can highlight all of it. So yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the father thing, because I feel like you're right. I mean, I do think we romanticize the past in a lot of ways, specifically on the right. There are a lot of studies that show that millennial fathers are way more involved than their parents' generation were, and I think that's an actually good thing. I don't think that necessarily changes what I mean. Like, just so because women now have the means to provide for themselves financially and everything like that, I think it means we're still looking for a man who can be there to provide for us, but it looks different. So, if we are going to be, out in the workforce ourselves, if the financial burden is now on 2 people instead of just 1, I think it makes sense that for both people to be giving 100%, which is what a marriage should be, right? It's not 50-50, it's 100 and 100. It means that the father should also be way more involved than he was in the past. Not to mention also it's just your kid, and you should want that, like regardless of how the working distribution is.
Yeah, but I think the issue is that there's going to be some lag time there because our fathers didn't have that training. And then our fathers, like, I love both my parents. We're very, very, very different people. Okay. But I love both my parents. I don't think I've ever had an emotional conversation with my dad ever. And not for lack of trying. Like, I love him. He's a cool guy. I have a lot of respect for him, but he's just not wired that way at all. And I think that was normal for like a lot of boomer parents. I know a lot of people in my age bracket who, for instance, like their parents never talked to them about sex a single time in their entire life because it was too much of an awkward conversation. Or stories about girls that have their first period and their moms never warned them. In terms of like the level of involvement they would just be in class and your uterus is falling out. You're like, holy shit, I'm dying. And their mom's like, oh, that's cute. It's like, it's not. So yeah, I kind of feel like on that in terms of expectations for people changing over time, because the masculine traits are always so cool, and because women have kind of wanted to gravitate towards that, not necessarily in the super warrior way, but just like in being able to have a job and being able to make choices for yourself and not necessarily being chained down all the time. I don't think there's like a good voice out there telling men like, hey, it is good to be able to hold a conversation and, be emotionally receptive and responsive to somebody while you're talking to them. It is good to be able to go on a first date and not treat the girl like your mom because it's the first time you've had somebody be emotionally reflective to you in your entire life. Now you're going to trauma dump every single thing you can on them. It is good. Listen, I don't know if you've heard the term weaponized incompetence. Like, I'll watch dudes, put together entire computer systems and then be like, I can't work the washer or dryer because I'm going to break anything. Can you please do it? I can't do any housework at all. Like, come on, bro, you can do this.
Yeah, no, I had an ex-boyfriend who literally told me that he screwed up doing something in the kitchen so that I wouldn't ask him in the future to do it, and I would just do it.
Yeah, I've done that before.
I think that's
in the past, but yeah.